Demons have an odd place in our odd modern culture, a culture which officially denies their existence and calls them superstitious, but then which makes Lucifer a kind of a suave and sophisticated hero of a soap opera, if I remember correctly, on Netflix or one of those places, seducing or being seduced by a policewoman, helping her fight crime, I guess. Well, maybe Milton was the first one to make Satan a sort of a Protestant anti-hero. Now, demons are a bit of an embarrassment to us modern-day Christians. And very often I heard sermons where people have tried to explain them away as, mental illness. Everything is a mental illness these days. It was a wonderful excuse, for instance, for the Soviets to send a lot of people to re-education camps, as they call them, where they would be re-educated with picks and shovels. It's a particular embarrassment, I think, that the reading the Gospel for Ash Wednesday and the first 3 Sundays of Lent all feature Jesus' confrontation with demons, either the big guy or smaller ones. My particular favorite is actually the beginning of the Gospel for the 3rd Sunday in Lent. At that time, Jesus had cast out a demon, and it was dumb. Now, I realize that it was a dumb demon because it couldn't speak. But I kind of like the, the stupid version, because it reminds me that although demons are dumb, sometimes they're outsmart me. And then, of course, also, I think sometimes demons encourage us to remain silent when we should be speaking. Now, I recently reread the Screwtape letters, which I highly recommend. If you haven't read them, well, do. I was introduced to the Screwtape letters by my delightful high school English literature and Latin teacher, Edith Shannon, who would probably be fired if she were alive today, because she introduced us to a lot of books that these days would have been considered her speaking, where the powers of this world would wish that she would remain dumb. And it is, I think, important to remember that we are indeed in a battle. And one of the things that Lewis, as his big demon worm would say, is the best weapon that we have against the opponent, who of course is Christ for the demons, is convincing us that demons don't exist. Paul famously wrote in Ephesians, "Be strong in the Lord, in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm." And he goes on, of course, to delineate what the full armor of God is. And I confess that more often than not, rather than take part in this battle, I kind of just hunker down in my trench and hope the battle pass by. But, of course, to do that is to be taken prisoner of war or to die. And so I have found it helpful to augment the Screwtape letters with this book by Paul Thigpen called A Manual of Spiritual Warfare. Now, it was published by Tan Books, who is a wonderful publisher of very traditional Catholic literature, trad literature. And this little book is just a jewel for those who would engage in spiritual warfare. I guess I'll move around and take a different direction here. He divides the book into two sections after an introduction about how to use it. One, preparing for the battle. And a lot of the things that he covers are kind of also covered in the Screwtape letters. And then aids in battle, what the church teaches about spiritual warfare. And of course, these days, unfortunately, a lot of the church doesn't teach anything about spiritual warfare. We kind of look at everything as political, and I will get back to that if I remember to. And then he has a long list of scriptures about the spiritual warfare. Help from the saints. It is important to remember that we do not fight alone. I'll put a link in the description also to a recent video by Seraphim of Mull about spiritual warfare. He reminds us that, we're neophytes in this, whereas the opponent has been doing it for many, many years. And then it has a lot of prayers and devotions and hymns for the battle. I don't know that it's much use to go through this book in great detail. But well, when I look at evidence of the battle, I was tempted to put up photographs of just an awful lot of the abject evil that is going on in the world these days. But I'll let you fill in the blanks. I am reminded of a time I visited a Methodist church not too long ago, a church that I had been sort of an adjunct pastor at, an unpaid adjunct pastor, because for a number of reasons. Anyway, and the young woman who was now their pastoress explained how, of course, they didn't really believe in evil, but they did go on to demonize people who belonged to a political party other than their own. And this is something I think we need to come back to. Well, I also have found recently very helpful in spiritual battle, the Rosary. I've known about the Rosary for years, but I've really only begun using the Rosary lately. And I find it, as people have said for centuries, it to be a very powerful weapon. I had a St. Benedict's Rosary, which I lost somehow, so I've gotten a St. Michael's Rosary. Michael, the chief angel in the heavenly host, so to speak, fighting against Satan. And there are two prayers in here I would like to bring to your attention if I can find them. One is a prayer to Our Lady, after all, she's the one who stamps down the head of the serpent O Mary, powerful Virgin, you are the mighty and powerful protector of the Church. You are the marvelous help of Christians. You are terrifying as an army in battle array. You alone have destroyed every heresy in the whole world. In the midst of our anguish, our troubles, and our distresses, defend us from the power of the enemies, and at the hour of our death, receive our souls in paradise. I was watching a lecture by a Franciscan, I think it was, who said, when he is terribly tempted, he says 3 Hail Marys and the distractions tend to go away. I unfortunately often forget and enjoy the temptations, and then afterwards I enjoy the unfortunate effects of the temptations. And then this prayer to Michael. Glorious Saint Michael, valiant commander of the angelic host, fierce archangel warrior, I need your protection in this daily battle against the ancient enemies of God, and I ask you to take me under your wing to train me as a soldier for the army of heaven. Teach me to be strong in battle, brave under assault, firm in virtue, unflinching in faith, persevering in loyalty to my comrades, fully armed and ready for the divinely made weapons and armor of the spiritual combat. Saint Michael, lead me into the fray, and by God's grace I will follow, in the strength of Christ my King, under the bright banner of Our Lady, before whom the servant flees. Amen. And there's also one other thing I want to share from this book. It is my favorite Paschal hymn, my favorite Easter hymn. And time is more complicated than we tend to think of it. It's not, just as straightforward as we might like. And sometimes people go on fighting after the battle is over. I think about the amazing defense of Berlin in the last days of World War II, when obviously the battle was over, and yet the defeated forces fought to the death. In this case, the defeated forces that fight to the death are the demons who would be delighted if we would think they didn't exist. The strife is o'er, the battle done, the victory of life is won. The song of triumph has begun. Alleluia. The powers of death have done their worst, but Christ their legions has dispersed. Let shouts of holy joy outburst. Alleluia. These 3 sad days are quickly sped. He rises glorious from the dead. All glory to our risen head. Alleluia. He closed the yawning gates of hell, the bars from heaven's high portals fell. Let hymns of praise his triumphs tell. Alleluia. Lord, by the stripes which wounded thee, from death's dread sting thy servants flee, that we may live and sing to thee. Alleluia. Well, I want to get back to that thing that I said I wanted to get back to, and again, Lewis has written about it in his essay, The Weight of Glory. And that is that the weapon, I think, that most often we are all assaulted by is the feeling that we are useless, that we are worthless, that we are done for. And if we don't convince ourselves that we're done for, we convince ourselves that someone else is completely evil. I have a young friend who came by not too long ago, and he said he thought he was possessed by the devil. As Thigpen points out, demonic possession does happen. I mean, we see it in the Gospels, but it's very rare. But if we are convinced that we are possessed by the devil, we won't recognize that the strife is o'er. And the other thing is that we demonize those people whom we think of as our enemies. And, we, in the politics of this perverse and faithless age, we see that a lot. And, this is, again, one of the things that Lewis points out. He says, if we would just look at that person next to us in the pew, next to us in the line at Safeway, next to us in the line at the voting booth, or next to us on Twitter where they posted something that we disagree with, and see them as God sees them, someone covered with the weight of glory, we might live a very different kind of life. Paul, of course, famously talks about this in the second letter to the Corinthians. Do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light momentary affliction is preparing us for an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. We were told to love our enemies, to pray for those who persecute us, not to hate them, and not to assume that they are somehow demonically possessed, while we are all finished creatures. We got our out-of-jail-free card, and we're ready to take that triumphal march to the heavenly gates. And I suspect that a lot of us will be disappointed when we get there, because we might find that some of the people we consider our enemies got there first. It is, I think, important to remember as we approach this Easter season that traditionally the first person to enter hell was, after all, one of Jesus' own disciples. And the first person to enter paradise was a thief justly condemned to death. Well, I will pray for you in your spiritual warfare, and hope you will for me. And I, as always, appreciate your comments, and thank you for watching.